Before we start, I just wanted to share an interesting story. There was a Sephardic father of a girl who knew a Sephardic father of a boy, and he figured, you have a girl, you have a boy, I have a girl, let's do a shidduch. So he goes over to his friend, and he says, "Nasa shidduch, you have a son, I have a daughter, let's do a shidduch, what could be wrong?" So the father of the boy says, "Do you have any money?" Because I don't have any money, and I can't pay for a chasna, I can't pay for clothing, I don't have money, I can't do it. So the girl's father says, "Nah, katuv b'Torah shetzarich lasot shidduch av b'li kesef." Ifo katuv atzeh, ele toldot Noach, Rashi Tevot, naseh chatuna, naseh chavot. So he says, "Oh, very interesting. It's a nice thought. Let me think it over. I'm going to get back to you." Next week he comes back and tells him, "I thought it over. I'm not going to do the shidduch." Lama katuv b'Torah lech lecha lo chatana lo chavot. Okay. So we are in the middle of discussing the Machlokes Reb Meir and the Chachamim. Now, at face value, it seems like Reb Meir holds mefaglin b'chatzi matir, because what Reb Meir said was up at the top of Mem Aleph Amud Beis, he said that pigol b'koimetz v'loy b'levoina, or b'levoina v'loy b'koimetz, that it will be pigol. So it seems like in the middle of an avodah, half an avodah would make it pigol, and therefore v'chayovin a love courage. So Rish Lakish told us, don't think that Pshat and Reb Meir is pashut, that mifaglim b'chatzi matir. I will prove to you that that cannot be the case. Why? Because of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah, when it was discussing the halachas of the dam of achatas hapnimi, of which every single matana is mandatory, and if you miss even one, there's no ritzui for the carbon. The Mishnah says as follows: Lefichach, since all of the zrikas are mandatory, im nosan kulon kesiknon, if all of the matnas dam, and we're going to soon see later today that it was either 11 or 43 or 47 or even maybe 48, if you did them all kesiknon, which would pashtus mean with the proper kavanah of l'shem, the right kavanas. And even though only the last one was done with a machshava of pigol, it will not be pigol, posel ve'im beikaris. And Rashi on the Mishnah said, this must be because of the Rabbanon who hold ein mefaglin bechatzi avoda, right? But the problem is, you have to make a diuk. It's mashma, dafke, if the last one is a machshavas pigol and the first ones are good, then it's not going to be pigol. But if the first one was shaloi ketigna, which means a machshav of pigol, v'chulon kesignon, it would be pigol. If it's going according to Rabbanon, who holds ein mefagim b'chatzi matir, that shouldn't be pigol either. So what do we have to say? The first thing we can prove is this Mishnah can't go according to the Rabbanon, it must be according to Reb Meir. So we're already getting closer. Once we have a Mishnah that's going according to Reb Meir, now we can use the Mishnah to clarify what Reb Meir's position is. So let's think now. If Reb Meir has the position of mefaglim b'chatzi matir, it wouldn't help, because if it's mefaglim b'chatzi matir, then what does it mean? If at the end you had a kavanah of pigol, it's not pigol. Why wouldn't it be pigol? Mefaglim b'chatzi matir. So we're forced to say that the reason why it's not pigol in our Mishnah is because kala oisa al das rishonahu oisa. So therefore, when the Mishnah says in nosan kulun kesiknon the achash shaloi kesikne posel ve'em beikaris, is because Reb Meir holds that you cannot be mefagel b'chatzi avoda, and since at the beginning it was kesiknon, at the end it wasn't kesiknon, it's pigol ve'em beikaris. But the dik now is good. But if the first one was shaloi kesikna and all the other ones were kesikna, it would be pigol. You know why it would be pigol? Because since the first rika was shaloi bisman, it was chutz zman, it was a machshava pigol. You say kala oisa al das rishaynahu oisa. So you'll say once he did the first rika with a machshava of chutz zman, that automatically carries through the rest of the zrikos, and that would explain our Mishnah side the words that it said and side the diuk that we made from it. That if the first zrika was the one that was chutz zman, was a machshava pigol, the whole thing becomes pigol. So we have two proofs. A, the Mishnah must be going according to Rish Lakish, and B, the only way to explain it is that Rish Lakish holds Mifaglin. That Rish Lakish also holds Ein Mifaglin B'Chatzi Ma'aser, but he also holds Kol Ha'Oisa Al Das V'Shaynu Oisa. Beautiful raya Rish Lakish had. Rab Shmuel Bar Yitzchok argues on Rish Lakish, and he holds that's not pshat. It's not pshat on Reb Meir. Reb Meir holds Mifaglin B'Chatzi Ma'aser. That is his shita. That is his shita. The Mishnah is going according to Rabbanan. You had a problem with the dik in our Mishnah. Why is it that it would be pigel if the beginning was pigel and then it wasn't? An innovative pshat. Kisiknon means the perfect crime. It was a perfect pigel. So when the Mishnah says lefichach im nosan kulon kisiknon v'achas shaloi kisikna, what it meant is if all of these rikas were all with a perfect and pristine chazanish shir of chus lizmanoi, and only the last one was shaloi kisikna, was a machshav of stam, that would be possible by Bekoros. Why? Because ein mefaglen v'chatzi ma'aser. And now it fits in beautifully. It's not so geschmack to learn kulon kisikna means bad, but we could say that it's going according to the Rabbanan, and therefore all bets are off as far as Reb Meir is concerned. But the Rabbanan holds ein mefaglen v'chatzi ma'aser. The Gemara says that's not a good pshat. Why is that not a good pshat? Because what does it actually say? It's saying lefichach amnozim kulon kisiknon and va'achas shaloi kisiknon. And how are we touching shaloi kisikna? With a machshava stam, without a machshava pigel, a kosher machshava. How could you describe a kosher machshava of shaloi kisikna? You know what it should have said if it meant a kosher machshava? Rashi says it could have said im nasan kulum kisiknon. Let's look at Rashi. Im nasan kulum kisiknon chutz me'achas men. Could have chutz me'achas men, and then you could touch that the other one was done with a good kavanah, or it could have said oy achas b'shtika. But to say achas shaloi kisikna and say that shaloi kisikna is actually referring to a proper kavanah, that's too difficult to accept. So we reject that shot, and therefore it knocks out this whole shot. So we have to go back to Reb Meir. So Zok the Gemara about Midiktani lefichach hamnosim kulon kisikna v'achas shaloi kisikna possible in Bekoros. Shaloi kisikna must mean shaloi kisikna mamish, that it was a machshava pigel. And mechalal the tikna lehech sheirahu. And all the first machshavas were lechshera. And so what are you going to say? So maybe it's still the Rabbanon, and the Rabbanon hold that if all of the machshavas until the end were kosher machshavas, and just the last machshava was puzzle, so then the reason would be because of ein mefaglen b'chatzi ma'aser. That's what it would mean, and you don't have a right to a merit at all. Zok Gemara, no. Omar Rava, we could still salvage the pshat to say that it's going according to the Rabban. Omar Rava, my shaloi kisikna, it means chuslim kaim. So now it fits in very good. If all of the machshavas, all of the zerikas were done with a perfect pigel, and the last one was done with not a perfect pigel, but not a perfect avoid either. So therefore, we say and it will not carry a chi. Of course, if you eat it, it'll just be puzzle. Rabashi, there's another machshav of shaloi kisikna that's not pigel either. For instance, shaloi l'shmai. So all of the zrikas until the last zrika was done with a pristine machshava of chutz l'zmanoi, and the last zrika was done either with a machshava of chutz l'klaimoi or a machshava of shaloi l'shmai. But regardless, it's a chatzi ma'isa, and therefore it wouldn't be pigel with a chi of cards. Zok to Gemara, Michlal, if the Mishnah B'davka Chapdon, the only time you say it's not pigel is only if the last one was also a bad machshava, but it was either chutz l'kaim or chutz l'zmanoi, then I can make a diuk. What if it was a machshava stam? What if it was a kosher machshava? There it's mashma that it would be a good pigel, right? Because why did the Mishnah Chapon Dafka of Machshavas Plil? They should have said even the Machshavas kosher wouldn't be pigel. Elamai must be that will be pigel. Mechal dechiloi ovad lechustum kabi b'shaloi l'shmoi. Mechayiv, it'll be real pigel. How could that be? The only way you could say that is if you hold that kol ha'isa al das rishayna hu oisa. And we already know the Rabbanim don't hold like that. It's mufurish in their words, because if they said if you had machshav about a kmitza, not part of this, it's not going to be pickle. So we're forced again back to the pshat to say it's going to Reb Meir. So no, lav davka. Even shaloi l'shmoi, don't make that dik that shaloi l'shmoi would be a chayv al pickle. Shaloi l'shmoi would also be just possible. So why didn't it pick a regular case? Why did even a kosher machshava would also be possible and wouldn't be chayav paris? So why did the Mishnah bedaf mechap on the case of either shalol shemoy or of chutzum kaimoy? It's because the Tana, when it was talking about the chatois pnimiyos, wanted to mirror the same cases that the earlier half of the Mishnah that was talking about the chatois hachitzonius were saying. And what did it say in the first half of the Mishnah? About only the first Zerikos is relevant. If the first Zerikos was done chutzum zmanoi and the second Zerikos was done chutzum koimoi, you totally ignore the chutzum koimoi and it remains as pigel. Why? Because the second and third and fourth Zerikos don't count. So the contrast is by chatasha pnimius, if the first was chutzum zmanoi and the second was chutzum koimoi, there it would not be pigel, right? It would not be pigel. And that's the contrast that the Mishnah wants to bedaf the chabon is the same case as earlier. So I did a tana ratio by chatzois apnitzonios pigol v'chayovin olav kares, because the machshava of choslam koimai in the second and third and fourth rika don't impact anything because the ritzia already happened by the first rika. So when we want to contrast it with the chatzois apnimis where all those rikas are relevant, it picked the same similar case. Tanunami seifa possible in Bekaris, but Avada, even if he had a machshava toiva, even if he didn't have a machshava psula for the last rika, it would also be possible in Bekaris because the Rabbanan hold ein mefaglin v'chatimais.
I want to belabor this, but you say machshava toiva. Why can't we just say that he had the actual proper kavanah? You never touching it that way. You're touching it that he didn't have a machshava pigel, like he just had a machshava stam. Why don't we say that the last one he had for the right Zman and the right Malkum, the right Korban.
Well, that would also be the same thing as in the Fagel Chatzimaiser.
But that would be the highest level, right?
Yeah, but we're trying to discuss. Maybe it's the Rabbanon who holds Kol Oisal Das Rishonim Oisa.
We already said it. They don't hold that.
I understand. So what are you suggesting? What should
all I'm saying is that let's go to the most biggest chiddush. The biggest chiddush would be if I had a Maisa Pigel for all the first Zerikas, and the last one I had the perfect machshava.
That would be less of a chiddush that's not pigel.
Why?
Because that's a perfect machshava.
And it might save all the other ones. Well, but it doesn't. You're saying it doesn't save it
because ein mefagel b'chatzi ma'isa doesn't care if the whole thing wasn't.
Why it makes it the biggest chiddush.
I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, the rule is the same. If you don't have a pristine chutz l'zmanoi throughout the entire avoda,
in the bad sense,
pristine in the bad sense, that's right. Perfectly evil for the entire avoda, it will not be pigel. It doesn't make a difference if you had a kavanah toiva, l'shma, stam, chusum koimoi, or shaloi l'shma. Either way, it doesn't matter.
You messed up the
pickle. You messed up your pickle. You wanted that pickle so badly, you're not getting it. Okay, devalted. Meisvei. Now the Gemara, what we did now is we diffused the raya vershlokish. We no longer have a raya from our Mishnah that Meir holds kol oisal das rishayna oisa. Right? It's neutral. Now the Gemara is going to ask a kasha on Shlokish. The Gemara is going to prove that Reb Meir holds yes mifaglin b'chatzi ma'aser. Reb Meir wanted to hold. Rabbi Shlokish wanted to hold that Reb Meir agrees with the Rabbanan in mifaglin b'chatzi ma'aser, but he holds that kol oisal das rishayna oisa. The Gemara challenged that, and the Gemara said mehechadesi. Maybe, in fact, Reb Meir holds yesh mefaglin b'chatzi ma'aser, and now maybe the Gemara is going to prove that Reb Meir holds yesh mefaglin b'chatzi ma'aser. So that's what we're about. That's what we're about to learn. But I'll call upon them. We do have two opinions. It seems in Reb Meir. Is it the way Resh Lakish understood it, because Kol Oisal Das Rishayna Oisa, or is Reb Meir's svara because of Yesh Mefaglin B'Chatzi Ma'aser? Break the Gemara. Meisvei. B'Amed Devar Ma'amurim. Where do we say that all that counts is the first avodah, and if the first Zrika, if the first Rika was done with Reshev Pigel, it's Pigel, and nothing that happens later will impact it, That's only bedomim hanitnin al mizbech hachiton. Because we know only the first Zerikos is the main Zerika, that's the Maratza, and therefore, if that's done by Meshech Spigel, it doesn't matter what happened after. Aval, however, turning on to Amar Aleph, Aval, domim hanitnin al mizbech hapnimi, the domim that are on the mizbech hapnimi, kigoyin arboim v'sholosh shel yom HaKippurim. So now this is a very good trivia question. How many Zerikas are done on Yom Kippur? 43. And we're going to go through where that number comes from. V'yachad asor shel par koyin Mashiach, v'achad asor shel par helam dov shel tzibur. Pigel, if he had a machshava pigel, bein berishona, side by the first set of Zerikas, ubein b'shniya, side by the second set of Zerikas, ubein b'shlishis, or by the third set of Zerikas, that means even if you only had a machshava pigel on part of the Zerika, either part 1, part 2, or part 3, and we'll get to what those are soon. But clearly, even with the machshav of pigel on the partial avoida, Reb Meir Amar pigel v'chayav and lafkaris. This is checkmate. This is Reb Meir saying black and white that yesh mefaglim b'chatzi ma'isa. He's saying even only one part of the zrika that you did with a machshav pigel is pigel. This is a shtickle checkmate. You're going to see the Gemara in Zevachim has unconventional means of weaseling their way out of a checkmate.
But each one could be its own.
So we're going to get there in a second. Now let's just go through the technicalities. How do you have 48? How do you have 43 zrikas? So Rashi lists it off very simple. The first is achas lamaila v'sheva lamata al bein habadim. So there were 8 zrikas done bein habadim. Achas lamaila v'sheva lamata. Okay. El Kamasa, that's right. So that's 8. Midam apor uchendeg the midam aseir. The dam aseir did the same, so we're at 16, right? Then they did another 8 and 8 on the pareiches. That's now 32. 16 plus 16 is 32. Then they did 4 on the karnis hamizbeich hapnimi, mishneam ke'echad muravim. So before they did the matanos and the mizbeich hapnimi, they mixed the blood of the par and the seir, which now is only additional 4. So 32 plus 4 is 36. Right? On Amud Beis, we're going to have a Shita who holds that the blood was spritz separately, so there'll be an extra 4. Right?
Terry said they have a little cup. You learned it.
I said, but the question is, did they mix the blood together before they spritzed on the Mizbech HaPnimi or not? So now we're working that they didn't mix the blood together. So between the par and the seir, it was only 4 more matanos. So right now we are at 36. And then you have the 7 hazois al tahara. They spritzed 7 times on the top of the Mizbeach. So 36 plus 7 is 43. Make sense?
What about spritzing inside the
Kodesh HaKodeshim? We counted that already. That was the first 16 in between the bottom, right? And then there was another 16 on the pareiches, right? And then they had so that's how you have 43. The 11 of the par helam davar and par mashiach was very, very simple. We know they spritzed 7 times towards the hechel, right? And then they put it on the 4 karnos. So there's 11. 11 is a much easier cheshbon. So then the Brisa says, Pigel bein b'rishonim bein b'shnei bein b'shlishis. What are these 3 categories of dam? So the Rishona is the matanoi shalafnai v'lafnim. So the Rishona would be in all of the matnas dam that are done in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. B'shnia would be the set of dam that's done on the pareiches, and the shlishis is al mizbech hazov. So those are the 3 categories. We're going to soon see that there's possibly a 4th category as well, which we'll get to later. But right now, there's phase A, phase B, and phase C of Zerikos. So Zokt Reb Meir, even if only on one of these 3 phases you had a machshavas pigel, it would be pigel. That's a pretty black and white raya that yesh mefagled b'chatzi ma'aser. V'chachamim ma'imrim ein boy karis ad sheyifagel b'chol mater, which is what the chachamim shita is. Ein mefagel b'chatzi ma'aser. Zokt Gemara. All 3.
43.
That's right, because the matter is the zrika. The whole zrika has to be done with a machshav of chut l'zman. Chatani mia. We have a brisa. Let's go back to it. Pigel bein berishona, bein b'shnia, bein b'shlishis, upolik. And Rebbe Meir argues clearly. He says yes, mefagel b'chatzi ma'aser. So listen to this creative shot. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Avin, hachav b'mayaskinon kegoyin shepigel b'shchita dechad mater. What does this mean? What would be the halacha? What would be the halacha if the Kohen Gadol was in the Kodesh HaKodeshim and he was spritzing the blood. He was spritzing the blood, and he did all of the matanos that had to be done in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the 16 Zerikos bein abadim. And then he was a sickle shlemazel, and he dropped the blood and all spilled out. So now, how is he going to complete the additional Zerikos? What? Okay, yeah, he was nervous. That's right, he was nervous. Okay, and he and now, or could be he was doing the second mission and he dropped dead. But that's not the example that Rashi gives. But whatever the case is, so now what do? You know what the halach is? It says in the Mishnah Yuma, what you do is you shecht another par, and you don't start from the beginning. You can just pick up from the second set that are on the paroiches. And what happens if the kohen, after he spritzes on the paroiches, he spills the blood again? So then we bring a third animal, and then we spritz that blood on the mizbeach. So you could combine the zerikos of 3 animals. What? At that point, you mean? At that point, maybe it's time to.
I think you're fine. You're firing.
Very good. So what it means here is pigel bein b'rishonim bein b'shivim bein b'shlishi means the pigel was not by the actual zrika. The pigel was by the shchita. So if he had kavana on the first set of zrikas during the shchita, which is a full avoida for pigel, or bein b'shniya when he shechted his second animal, so. Yes, it was the second set of zrikas, but it's not the machshavas pigel during the zrika that we're thinking about. It's the machshavas pigel during the shchita, which is a full avodah. So therefore, maybe what Reb Shimon meant is, if there were 3 different parais that were shechted, each one for a different set of zrikas, and you had kavanah pigel for the entire shchita, that's where he meant, and that's not a chatzi. That's not a chatzi ma'aser, that's a full ma'aser. Even though the ma'aser is a shtickle chatzi ma'aser because it's part of the larger avoid of the zrika, but you'll look at each shchita for itself. And therefore, it's not considered pigel b'chatzi ma'aser because a shchita is an avoid shleim. So it's a very creative way. You weren't expecting that, were you? What?
He's the relief pitcher. He's the sky brother. It's Yom Kippur, and he's having him a go bigger. It doesn't make any sense.
A lot of these things are difficult on who would do that. But Zog to Gemara, so Omar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Avin, you don't have a raya about the shaila of mafagl mechatzi matir, because in this case, in fact, it's not mafagl. It's not mafagl mechatzi matir because hachab b'ma'iskin goes your pigel b'shchita the chad matir. Frank the Gemara, a very very nice pshat. But then why in the world would the Rabbanon say it's not pigel? Yachi, my time of the Rabbanon. Why wouldn't it be pigel? He had kavanas pigel for an entire shchita. So watch, it's getting even more exciting. Omar Rava, Zokt Rava, we're going to end up abandoning this pshat because we're going to have to put so many patches on it. Eventually, we have to abandon it. But Omar Rava, listen to this one. Man chachamim Rabbi Lozer. In travels, we're learning a lot of very interesting halachas. So man chachamim Rabbi Lozer. Who is Rabbi Lozer? He said that akoymates v'alavoina v'aketoyres u'minchas kayanim. These are all things that are one matana. The halach is you're not allowed to be makter anything on mizbeach b'chutz. It's like shchutei chutz. It's chayv paras, right? Now, how much of the carbon do you have to be makter b'chutz to become liable for shchutei chutz? So the Tanakama says 1 kazayis. If even 1 kazayis, whether to the beginning, whether to the end, whether to the middle, if even 1 kazayis you're makter b'chutz, you're going to be over because of shchutei chutz. But Rabbi Lazar poiter achi yaakov eskulam. In order to be over al shchutei chutz, all of the required haktorah has to be done b'chutz. Just doing a kazayis b'chutz does not trigger a chiyuv of shchutei chutz. Now, Rashi does point out there's an exception to the rule. The exception is if it was the last kazayis. If it was the last kazayis with which the avoid becomes nigmar, then even Rabbi Loza would agree that would be shchutei chutz. But if it was a kazayis in the middle, even if it was a kazayis that you were makter chutz, it would not be shchutei chutz. So let's stop and think about this for a second. So the Gemara now wants to say the same shita that Rabbi Lezer held, lagabe shchutei chutz, that unless the complete avoida is done be'isr, it won't be a problem of shchutei chutz. Let's say that Rabbi Lezer holds that same theory when we're talking about pigel. And therefore, by pigel, the entire avoida, every part of the matir, has to be done with a machshava pigel, meaning all three shchitas. Unless all three shchitas, we're talking about multiple animals here, for the multiple sets of avoidas. So Rebbe Lezer would hold that unless all three shchitas were done b'chutz, it wouldn't be shchut chutz, right? Because it's one avoida. So by the same token, unless all three shchitas were done with a machshava of chutz manoi, this would not be pigel. So let's say that this brisa now that we thought was a checkmate that proves that her mayors hold in the fact matir, in fact, has nothing to do with that shaila. It's a whole different shaila. Whether or not the shchita that's part of a series of shchitas all to be able to fulfill the zrika, is that shchita a standalone independent, which according to Rav Meir would be mefagel, or according to the Rabbanon, since he holds a kabbalah that whenever you're passing something, the entire matter is looked at as one big item, it wouldn't be mefagel. So that's what we want to say. Zok to Gemara, Rabbi Lezer Poiter Achi Yaakov Eskula. Zok to Gemara, nice try, but this doesn't work. Because Lagabi, what are we talking about? Rabbi Lezer, that we just quoted, was speaking about koimitz, talking about haktara. He's not talking about the avoid of Zrikas Dam. And Rabbi Lezer does not maintain his shita that it's all one big avoida when it comes to Zrikas Dam. Why? Because via Omar Rava said, Umoida Rabbi Lezer b'damim. When it comes to blood, Rabbi Lezer holds even if you made a zrika of some of the dam outside, that would also be considered shchut chutz. Where did he say that? In response to what did Rava say? The chiddush in Rabbi Lezer, the Tnan Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, mimakim shapasak misham hu maskil. Now this is a very interesting shaila. We discussed a moment ago what happens if all of the zrikas were done bifnim, all of the zrikas were done bifnim, and then the kohen gadol spilled out the blood. So we said, when you bring the next par, everybody agrees you don't start over from the zrikas domim in the kodesh HaKodeshim, you start now from the next phase. Once you finish the first phase, you don't have to go back to the first phase, you start from the next phase. That's what we learned. But what if he spilled out the blood in middle of doing the zrika lefnai v'lefnim? He made one zrika bein abadim and then he spilled out the blood. There's a machlokes if he has to redo it or not. So the halacha is, the Rabbanan hold, there it's a complete do-over. You got to start from the beginning of the Zerikus in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, it doesn't count. But Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon argue, and they say, yes, you got to go back to the Kodesh HaKodeshim to finish off the Zerikus, but you don't have to redo the Zerikus that were done already. You could start from scratch. So let's have a look at Rashi. The Tanan Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon Pligi Tanakama. They argue on the Tanakama, the Omar that says, Nosan miktas matonois shebefnim. He spritzed one or two zrikos, bein avadim, v'nishbach adam, and then the dam got spilled out. Yovi dam acher, you shecht another carbon, and you bring new dam. V'yaschil betchila. The Rabbanan say, since you didn't finish the entire set, you got to start from scratch. Hoyel v'loy gomer oisa kapara. But for Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, that you can just continue where you're holding. So what does that show us? Zakrashi, and here's the punchline. Alma avoidahi. You see that each individual zrika is considered a complete avoida in unto itself, and therefore, since it's an independent avoida in unto itself, that if you did that b'chutz, we look at it like you did it in the complete avoida b'chutz, and therefore you'll be chayiv. So therefore, the ipigal lechiyav chutz kamadamis. Since now we're comparing. And we're saying the same shita that Rabbi Lezer holds, lagabe shchut echutz, that's what it'll hold lagabe pigel. Well, lagabe shchut echutz, even one zrika, Rabbi Lezer clearly says would be mechayv for shchut echutz. So therefore, it should be mechayv for pigel as well. So loy mi boy b'shchita, never mind b'shchita da'ave pigel. Not only would it be pigel, elafiku pigel b'matana achas leRabbi Lezer pigel. Even if you had a kavana pigel by one matnas dam, it would be considered pigel. So oibazoi, if you want to learn that the Mishnah is speaking with three separate shchitas, well, why would the Rabbanan argue and say that it's not pigel? Even Rabbi Lezer holds over here that it's a complete avodah and it would be pigel. So we don't have a good pshat. So we're back to our checkmate. That means we have to learn that the Bryce is talking about 3 sets of damim, and if only on one of the sets of damim there was a machshava for pigul, Reb Meir holds it's pigul, and the Rebbe holds not pigul. So we're back to a raya that Reb Meir holds yesh mefaglen v'chati ma'aser. Kum drova tazogin achidish. Alo Omer Rava, you know what the case is? The case is there were 3 sets of damim. When he spritzed the blood lifnai lifnim, the Kohen Gadol said, "I'm spritzing it amanas to eat to burn the meat on the mizbech." Utz lizmanoi pigul v'shasak b'shniya. When he did the second zrika, he didn't say anything. So there, of course, Reb Meir holds that al b'maisa is al dash rishayna. But here, there's a variation in the case. The chazru pigul b'shlishis. By the third matanos, when he was putting it on the mizbech apnimi, then he announced pigul. Why would he announce that? If his machshava has consistently been a machshava pigul chutz l'manoi, why would he need to reinforce it by the third? Let it ride. Maybe the fact that he spoke it out by the third proves that by the second he was already not having kavana to do pigul anymore. Mao detema isol kedayich al das rishonahu mahader piguli b'shlishis lamali. The fact that he articulated the machshava of pigul by the third set proves that his second set was not al das rishonah. So maybe you would have a havmin to say, where did the mayor say kol ma'asam al das rishonah? That's if there was no change. But if by the third avodah he re-articulated pigul, wouldn't that indicate that the avodah right before he did not have a machshavas pigul? And since Reb Meir holds ein mefagel mechatzi ma'isa, it wouldn't be pigul. So that's the chiddush of this brisa. That's the chiddush of this brisa, is that even though he at a later point re-articulated, reconfirmed his pigul machshava, that doesn't mean to discount what happened right before. The problem, it's a beautiful pshat, but we all know that pshat is a combination of 2 factors. A, it has to make sense, and B, it has to say that in the brisa. But it doesn't say that in the brisa. Maskal of Rabashi, midi shosa katoni, doesn't say that in the brisa. It says in the brisa, very simple. Pigel bein b'rishoina, bein b'shniya, bein b'shlishis. What does it think about shosak by shniya?
Yeah, because the shniya would be connected to the first.
Yeah, but it's much with that. Whatever you did by the first, you did by the second, you did by the third, but it's not true. It should point out that something different happened by the shniya, right? So the Gemara rejects this pshat. Ella Omar Ravashi, I have another pshat, and here gets exciting. Hacha b'maya skinan to go into pigel b'rishoina. Really, according to Reb Meir, all he has to do is articulate a machshava of pigel by the first rika, and if he keeps his mouth shut for the rest of those rikas, it's assumed al das rishon everything was pigel. But he wanted to do a mitzvah's pigel mahadrin. He wanted a mitzvah mahadrin. So he spoke out by the first set of rikas l'shem pigel. He spoke out by the second rika, by the second set of rikas when he came when he was spritzing on the proichas l'shem pigel uveshlishis, and then when he was spritzing on the mizbech l'shem pigel. But by the fourth set, it was not l'shem pigel. So what 4th set? Where did you get a 4th set over here? So Rashi tells us that at this point we're splitting up the zrikas on the mizbeach. There's a zrika on the 4 karnos, and then there's a zrika on the top of the mizbeach. So we're going to call the top of the mizbeach the 4th zrika. So 3 zrikas when he spritzed on the bottom, l'shem pigel chotzos manai. When he spritzed on the brachos, chotzos manai. When he spritzed on the 4 karnos, chotzos manai. And then he's quiet by the 4th. So maybe you would say, if for 3 zrikas he articulated it, and he didn't articulate it for the last one, there maybe you wouldn't say al das rishoina. Because if he articulated it 3 times, and here he notably omitted it, maybe that's to show that he's not having a machshava pigul, kamashlo. And therefore, the 4th one will not be pigul, kamashlo. But no matter what he said, you continue with the svara of kol ha'oisa al das rishaynu ha'oisa. So now we have a pshat in Reb Meir, and you don't have a raya that he holds mefaglin bechati ma'aser. Gewaltig. Okay? Zog to Gemara, we still have a problem. You know why? Because what do you want to say? It means that you spoke in a machshava pigul, side by the rishona, side by the shniya, and side by the shlishis. But that's not what the Bride says. About bein katani, it says either the rishona, or the shniya, or the shlishis, but not by all 3. About bein katani. So the Gemara answers that kasha, no, that all of them.
Whole story.
Gewalt.
If the Bachvilla makes one little mistake by us, on the Kippur, we jump down the throat. This is the Kohen Gadol telling everybody, I'm doing this piggle. And they don't throw him out.
Yeah, he had to announce aloud,
Yeah,
right?
they're right, we said.
They know he'll get his due from.
Yeah, but you just take him out, wrap him up and throw him in the
It's,
mikveh.
it's almost like the Kohen Gadol. It's almost like the Malkara, Parshas Malchus Masa saying, I'm using this secretary and it's a postal
It's a
secretary.
postal secretary. Yeah, it's like it's the strangest
starts
thing.
it, but then Shlomo starts it also the people who back this kind of. You understand? That's
So
also.
there's
getting
there's
caught.
politics there.
Right.
But
How does
still,
it get
Are there
job?
Jews there?
Wrap him
Are
up-
there Jews
wrap him
there?
up
The
in the
first of
gospel.
politics.
No,
Take it back
guys
out
are
again.
gonna protect it.
That's what
You
Booby
said
tried
the
with you
European
once.
Union-
Google offered $100 for anybody who took some Muslim in the mikveh.
Zog the Gemara weiter. Now, till now, we were beating up on Rish Lakish, and we salvaged him, right? But he got a little bruised because you don't like the terrorists, right?
No,
Now we're going to beat up on the other guy.
the whole order just
Well, you could ask me the same question. There would be no Mesechus Nedarim if people didn't say, because it's crazy things that people said.
Wild face.
Right.
I had a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Gemara, till now we were beating up on Rish Lakish, and we were trying to prove
Don't this person.
this is communal. This is communal. Communal, everything has to be perfect. They don't put up with nonsense. Like Rabbi Shmuel asked the best guy after spilling the blood twice. Never mind changing the animal, change the kohen. Right? I once had I had an Italian associate in business, and I was telling him that we have a separate set of dishes for milchiks and separate for fleishiks, and then on Pesach we change our dishes again. He says, Joe, wouldn't it be so much easier or cheaper just to change religions?
That's a great point.
Then he'll be, I'm a real Christian, I'm a true Christian, but I have to have a little bit of fun along the way, just in case it's wrong. So until now, we were beating up on Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish held that Meir holds Ein Mefalga Mechatzi Maisa, and we tried to prove that Meir holds Yesh Mefalga Mechatzi Maisa. Now we're going to take on the other fellow. The other fellow said that Pshat in Meir is because Yesh Mefalga Mechatzi Maisa. Now we're going to ask a kasha on that. You're saying Reb Meir holds Yesh Mefalga Mechatzi Maisa. I'm going to challenge that. Omar Mar, Reb Meir says Pigel v'chayovin olav kares. Now, this is going to be a very difficult conceptual thing over here. So let me ask you a question. Pigel is a really fascinating chiddush. Why? Because you made the shchita with a machshava of chutas mamre. You passed on the carbon. Any halacha kabbalah and zrika you do is possible, right? So the question is, how is it possible that these are good? Yeah, the law also is that you have to complete the whole process in a pristine fashion for the pickle to be chal. But how is it possible? It's a circular logic. How is it possible to complete everything in a pristine fashion once you add the machshava of pigel by the shchita? So the halach is possible, the kabbalah is possible, and the zrika is possible. The teretz is the Torah said that this is pigel. The Torah is viewing the subsequent avoidance to the avoider that you had a machshava of pigel with. So even though you had a machshava of pigel by shchita, the Torah views, if there's no other external issue, merely the fact that it was pigel, the Torah views that Kabbalah as if it's legit, that halacha as if it's legit, and the zrika as if it's legit, even though it's not legit, right? That's the definition. That is the definition of pigel. Now, the Gemara's theory here is don't extend that chiddush more than what is absolutely muchach because of the aver of pigel. So therefore, what if I'm in the middle of a zrika and it goes puzzle? Who said that we extended, now the rest of the zrika is puzzle? Memela pigel forces you that if you did the whole shchita with a machshava of pigel, the next avoidance, even though they're technically puzzle, we look at them like they're kosher. But who said the Torah extended that to when you did a psal in middle? Who said that extends to there? So that is going to be the question over here. Omar Mar, Reb Meir Omer pigel b'chayon kares michti. We know the rule is kares le'mechayiv at sheyikru kol matira. The Omar Mar kartzos kosher, kein hartzos posel. Ma hartzos kosher at sheyikru kol matirav. Af hartzos posel at sheyikru kol matirav. The problem over here is when in the middle of this Zerikos it became possible, Vaha, even the Choshev Bey, Bifnim, Hasla, once in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, where the Kohen Gadol already had a Machshavas Pigel and passed in middle of the avodah of the Zerikos, now the Zerikos is disqualified. The next couple of words are removed in both Girsoyis, and therefore Ki Hadar Madi Behechol. Now, when the Kohen is spritzing in the Hechol, that's a apostle Zerikos. The dam is apostle already. Maya Ba'amu Dekadi. And don't say the Chiddush HaPigel extends to this. Maybe the Chiddush HaPigel only extends to if you did the entire avodah of a Pigel. The next avodah will look at it if it's good to be able to qualify the Pigel. But to say that it also extends in the middle of an avodah when the men puzzle, mehechates. That is the kasha. If you're going to hold that Reb Meir holds that mefaglin b'chatzi ma'isa, how does that work? Mehechates that the chiddush of Pigel goes so far. Omar Rabba, you know what Rabba said? I have a hechatimsa where you have a case of mefaglin b'chatzi ma'isa without having this problem where you're in the middle of a Zerikos. So now we're going to think of another interesting. So really, Reb Meir agrees. If you're mefagel in the middle of the Zerikos, it's taka not pigel, because it's not mefagel b'chatzi ma'isa. It's the middle of an avodah. The rest of the Zerikos is not good, and therefore it's a disqualified carbon. Where would it not be? Mishkachas la ba'arba parim uvedalet seirim. What happens if you needed to use multiple animals? Zokt Rashi barba parim pigal bein abadim b'chol matanoisa. What happens if all of these Zerikos in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, he had a Machshav Pigel, and then V'nishbach Hadam, the blood got spilled out. So now you need a new par. You need a new par for the second phase. V'shachad achar v'hizal aparoiches, and then again, and that was with a good kavanah. And then again he spilled the blood. So not only is he a Rosh, he's also a Shlomazel, right? Ve'echad ala karnois. And so there were 4 oxen, and only by the first set of Zerikos, the complete set of Zerikos, he did it with a machshav of chutlas malay. So Zok the Gemara, v'chivan the kaim alon, Zok Rashi v'achar, v'chivan the kaim alon b'seder yuma, that kulu kapar b'fnei atzman, each set of Zerikos is an independent kapara. Therefore, v'yadinu kil chason miskashra avodah b'hachi. If it was done kil chasoi, even though you had 4 different paros, it's going to be a kosher Zerikos. We combine them all. V'afilu l'rabbanan the pligi alayu Rab Shimon v'Rab Elazar b'nishbach adam be'emtza matanos. Even though there's a machlokes, if you didn't finish all of the matanos lefnai v'lefnim, you did some of them. There, the Rabbanan hold you have to do a do-over. Reb Shimon and Elazar hold you have to do over. But everybody agrees that if you completed all the avodas, all the Zerikos of one phase, everybody agrees the next animal that you bring because you spilled the blood, you start from the second phase. Everybody agrees to that, which means each phase is perceived as a separate, as an independent stage. So therefore, if you finished all the zois of the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and then the blood spills out, when you start again, you don't start from the beginning, you start from the Heichel. Therefore, we can say over here as well, Hilcha Chakanami Pigel, it would be considered a Pigel because the entire first set in the Kodesh HaKodeshim was the Pigel, and the entire second, third, and fourth set were completely kosher. And we won't say that the Balt he made a Pigel, the rest of the dam is messed up, because you see that it's compartmentalized. You could even bring another animal for it. So that's where Reb Meir said mefagel b'chatzi mater. But avada, if it was one set of dam, yes, once you had the kavanah of pigel in the kodesh kodeshim, you won't be able to follow through on the pigel anymore. Okay, Zok to Gemara, that was the teretz of Rabba. Rav Amar, no, don't get too complicated. Even though it's one dam, that's also part of the chiddush of pigel. So you say mehechanesi, I say no problem. It'll work anyway. Okay. You see, pigel is not working with the normal channel. The Torah says, as long as you do everything without doing anything wrong after that, it will trigger the pigel. Okay, now we're going to go to a little bit of an easier sugya. We're talking about how many Zerikos there were. So we said that there were 47 Zerikos, and we went through it. It was 8 and 8. 43, I'm sorry. 8 and 8 on the Bein Abadim, 8 and 8 on the Paroiches, 8 times 4 is 32, 4 on the 4 kronas, which is the combined blood of the Seir and the Par. So that takes us to 32 plus 4 is 36. And then you add 7 times on the Teresh Mizbeach, so 36 plus 7 is 43. Frank Gemara, Arbaim v'Shalosh, but Tanya, we have another brisa that says that it was Arbaim v'Sheva. So there's a discrepancy of 4 Zerikos. Zakt Gemara, yes, no problem. We can account for that. Ha commando Omar ma'arvin lekronos, ha commando Omar ein ma'arvin lekronos. The number 43 is based on having only 4 Zerikos on the kronos with the blood of the Par and the Seir combined. But if you hold that they didn't spritz on the kronos with the Seir and the Par combined, you have now an extra 4 Zerikos, so that accounts for the extra 4. We have another brayso that says there were 48 Zerikos. So Gemara, that's going to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda held that if you didn't pour the shiraim on the Yisrael Mizbeach, which was also a matnas dam, the whole avoid is possible. So that would be number 48. Hakam Amar ain't shiraim akvin.
Somebody's counting.
I'm sorry?
Somebody's counting.
Yeah, achas, ve'achas.
Yeah, and all of them. Achas v'achas wasn't only on the.
Well, what do you mean? The achas v'achas couldn't have been in the parach. It's because nobody seems to go down the first. The achas v'achas were only stuff in the hechel.
It says kach ha'ya oimer. No, what is it? Who's counting?
Oh, the Kohen saying achas v'achas. All right, he's saying that. We're not saying that.
Yeah.
Only by davening here we say it.
Yeah, he's saying
You're
about
saying good.
himself.
You're saying good. You're saying very good.
He's inside.
Anyway,
That's what you're worried about counting? This guy's got pig all over the place, and he's spilling the blood all over the place. This is what you're worried about?
you worried about precision. So I wanted to share with you a thought.
Animal.
We're all very frustrated because this Masechta is just so difficult, and the concepts and the complications. So I was thinking to myself, we know that when you learn Kachim, it's as if you brought Karbonis, right? So I thought it's easy. You'll go to your Bergwas. No, you were going to work for it. You want it to be as if you brought Karbonis. Kachim is hard. That also involves work. We think it's easier now than it was by the base of Mikdash, because by the base of Mikdash, we have to buy an animal, it costs money, and now we can go blah. No. This is also pretty hard. By the time we're done with Zevachim, you're going to be davening for the base of Mikdash, where we can just go buy an animal and give it to the Kohen and let him deal with it. Because in order for us to be Yosy, it's very, very hard.
We haven't even talked about the whether you can sue the coin for all this.
That's right. That's Nezikin. Now, I just want to figure out one very important thing. Really, there's a bigger mila in learning Kachim than there is in Kachim itself. Why? Because we berech cup yesterday about the power of Yom Kippur. Today we're talking about the power of Yom Kippur. We berech cup with it, right? So we get the benefit from the kapara of the power of Yom Kippur even on every other day, on a regular Tuesday. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they have to only get it once a year. But since we can get it by learning it, we have an advantage. We get it every day. I asked the Mechfreyen, what is the kapara of the kapara of Yom Kippur? Tumas Mikdash v'Kadoshav. We don't have it nowadays. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash. So this whole thing's not relevant. No, we know by Kachim there's a rule. You know, the Gufay, if we don't need these kapara for the Kedoshim, we have plenty of stuff where we can apply it to. But we're Zoicha every day to all of the kaparas of Yom Kippur. That made it a little bit easier to go through the frustration. Okay, Zog to Gemara Vayter. Meisvei. Now we're going to have another kasha. Frek Gemara Azoy. Bamed Devar Bamurim. Bikmitza, b'matan kli uvehila. Where do we say that it would be pigel? So Rashi tells us, Bamed Devar Mamurim is in the Tosefta of Meseches Menachos Katonim. And this is what it says. Bamed Devar Mamurim, Sham Mincha Nifgeles Be'avoida Achas. Where do we say that the Mincha could become pigel with one avoida? That either by the Kmitza, which is one avoida that's done for the mincha, or b'matan kli uvehilach, or when they take the kmitza and they put it into the keli to transport. She'ein sham ella avoidas matir echad. There's only one avoida there. See, by a regular carbon, there's so many different places where you could make pigel, by the shchita, by the kabbalah, by the lacha, by the zrika. But by the mincha, which avoida will be mifago, the kemitza, or b'matan kli, or behiloch, she'ein shom ella avoidas mater echad. Why? Because she'ein kemitza u'matan kli b'levayna. It only works for the flour and oil mixture. You wouldn't be able to do a kmitza on the levina. There's no matter because by levina that you just put it on the mizbeach. So you couldn't make pigol by doing a kmitza on the levina or putting the levina in the keli. The hilach. The fire shlo shaykh b'levina. Hilach you don't have by levina. Okay. Now,
Look, it's like halacha, it's the same thing.
yeah, but actually, if you're
Shemitah is like shechita.
they ask on Rashi, what do you mean hilach you don't have by levina? How do you get it to the mizbeach? So
There's no mitzvahs.
why not? You gotta get to the mizbeach. So Rashi, the Mefarshim say that this is referring to when you bring down for the Gemara there. It's referring to before you when you take the levina originally before you take the mizbeach. There was another hilach there. There was a hilach of just putting it into the klesharis, putting the kmitz into the klesharis. There's a hilach over there as well.
And then you
Which
sprinkle
didn't accept
the
it
right
by-
on top of that in the clay shards.
Levina is a powder? Levina?
Yeah, levina is
No, it has to be something that you can take off. Because the way it worked is when they prepared the mincha before the kmitza, Chaim Fear told us yesterday, they prepare the mixture and then they put the levina on top of it. But when you
In
make
the
the kmitza,
klei
no. Well, you're in the klesharis that you're preparing the mincha. Then the kohen did a kmitza with no levina on the area where there's no levina at all, and he put that levina into a keli, and then
That's the clay
and then he took all the levina and put it on afterwards.
into the kli.
Yeah,
And then you put everything onto the mizbeach.
correct.
Right, so the hiluch, there was no step for hiluch for levina.
Right, so so that's what we're talking about a hiluch that occurred between the kmitza and putting it in the keli, which doesn't apply to the levina. So Zoktimur, Mamed Devar Mamurim, the kmitza b'matan kli u'behiluch. Avol boloi lahaktara, but when it comes to actually being makter on the mizbeach, nosan es hakomitz b'machshava that's halavayna b'shtika. There, we have now an avodah that's applying to both components. So if you put the kmitza on the mizbeach with a machshava of eating the shirayim chutz lezmanoi, that's halavayna b'shtika, but no bad kavana with the levina, or the opposite. Oisha nosan es hakomitz b'shtika. So this is definitely a pigel b'chatzi mater. Reb Meir Omer pigel v'chayovin alav kares v'chachamim Omer ein bekares ad sheyifagel b'chol amater. Katani mia es hakomitz b'shtika v'es halavoyne b'machshava upolig and Reb Meir argues. So this is again a checkmate. You see clearly that Reb Meir holds yesh mefaglin b'chatzi mater. Zok Gemara no. Maybe Ema Kfar Nosan Es Halavoina. Maybe what it means is, let's go back to this brisa. Nosan is the comments first b'machshava, and then afterwards Ves Halavoina b'shtika, right? So that you could say is the svara. That you could say is the svara of kol oisal das rishaynu oisa. But Oisha Nosan is a comment b'shtika Ves Halavoina b'machshava. That you can't say is Kol ha'oisal das rishaynu oisa, because the first one was b'shtika. So it has to be because of mefaglin b'chatzi matir. But the problem is, Zok Gemara, you know what it means? Oisha nosnas akamis b'shtika v'salvayim b'machshava. It means you put the levana b'shtika after you put the levana b'machshava. So once again, the first thing that you did was b'machshava. So Oisha nosnas akamis b'shtika v'salvayim b'machshava doesn't mean first the kaimets b'shtika and then the levana b'machshava. It means when you put the kaimets on b'shtika, you had already put on the levana with a machshavas pigel. The levana with a machshavas pigel. So maybe that's how you forever it. So how could you say that? How could you say that? You can't say that for two reasons. Chada the hani reisha. Well, that's the case of the reisha, right? The case of the reisha was nosan is a kaimis machshava ves levani b'shtika. First the kaimis with the machshava pigel, then the levani b'shtika, and then the next case is you put the kaimis b'shtika after you put the levani b'machshava. That's exactly the same case as the first case. So that can't be that we're talking about the same case. But the other problem is it says ve'achar kach. It says ve'achar kach. Not in this brisa. There's another brisa that mirrors this brisa that specifically is ve'achar kach. Meaning the first one was b'shtika, the second one was with machshava, and there befeir Reb Meir holds that it's pigel. So checkmate, black and white. Reb Meir holds yesh mefagel b'chatzi ma'isa, and therefore Rish Lakish is August Logan. We don't see that Reb Meir holds that kol oisal das rishaynu oisal, but what you definitely see is that mefaglin b'chatzi ma'isa, and that is the maskana.
The article says completely there's no way. He says that the meat was put on the mizbeach, and the Levoni would then sprinkle it on top of it on the Mizbeach.
on the
When it
Mizbeach.
says nosan,
Uh-huh.
he's very clear.
So after the Kmitza was placed on the Mizbeach,
in Machshava and Pigel, that's Levoni ala Mizbeach.
Uh-huh.
So he's saying it wasn't done with Lishanis.
well, we don't know that. This is
No, we talked about it yesterday.
in this part, no, we don't know how it's supposed to be done and what he actually did. That this doesn't mean that that's the way to do it. That's what happened.
Well, the Pigel has to work with a perfect Meiser.
Yeah, but maybe the carbon is kosher if you don't put them on together. Right? Levani, you can put who
Well,
you put,
maybe it's not-
who you have to put on
it's not
together.
Akev.
And we're going to see soon a
I
lot of
thought it
different
was-
carbonas that we think are together. You could
If
separate.
you read the come on, when you read the.
But tomorrow we're going to learn
Change.
when it comes to the Mich and the Levani, you could separate them. We're actually going to learn that tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let me just figure out one thing. So if Rish Lakish holds, Yesh Mefagel Mechatzi Maisa, so we have to go back to our original Mishnah. What are the original Mishnah? Lefichach. So how did the Lefichach fit in? So let me just go back to the Lefichach. Lefichach, im Nozan Kulon Kiziklan, V'achas Shaloi Kiziklan, it would be possible. The Ein Bei Karis. Why would it be possible? Ein Bei Karis. I'm sorry, but he holds Yesh Mefaglen Mechatzi Maisa. So if Yesh Mefaglen Mechatzi Maisa, why is it possible Ein Bei Karis? It should be possible Yesh Bei Karis. If we're saying the Teretz is, this will have to go according to the Rabbanah, who holds. No, but the problem is you can't go according to the Rabbanah. We already said it can't go according to the Rabbanah. Oh no, we had ways where it could go according to the Rabbanah. We had those interesting cases where it means Kesiknan means with a pickle to Kamachshava. So you have to learn that's going according to Rabbanah, not according to our mayor, but our mayor separately holds a Fagim B'Chatzi Maisa, and you don't have a right to Rish Lakish that he also holds Koloisa. So we don't know what he holds by Koloisa, but he definitely holds Fagim B'Chatzi Maisa. Wow, this was like a doozer of a blot.